of a Jesus girl. Jesus girl. Hey, it's the diary of a Jesus girl. Let the wings of the Spirit of the Lord just a swirl. You are in it, but you know you're not a part of this world. And for the swine, you should never cast your pearl. Yes, it's just the diary of a Jesus girl. The diary of a Jesus girl.
Welcome to the Diary of a Jesus Girl podcast, where we discuss real-life issues of the committed Christian woman. This podcast will inspire you to love Jesus and impact lives like Jesus. And now it's time for your host, Crystal Day, award-winning author, speaker, and Christian coach.
All right, welcome to another episode of the Diary of a Jesus Girl podcast. And listen, guys, we are having a couple up this week. And with a couple up, of course, we know we're interviewing Christian couples that, just will be sharing their journey of what it looks like to really build a marriage God's way. And this week we have in the house the Cuffs. Now, if you're from Jamaica, I'm sure many of you guys are excited for this conversation. But for our overseas listeners, which I feel like most of you probably know already, I want you guys to definitely tune in. And then once you're finished, I want you to definitely go and check them out, right? So welcome Brian and Basilia Cuff to the Diary of a Jesus Girl podcast.
Hey, thanks for having us.
Thank you so much for having us.
Listen, I'm excited. My whole family is excited, right? About this podcast interview, of course, because, with the TikTok, my daughter is 10, so she's on TikTok and she's just, such a big fan of Basillia and her work. And then, Brian, your interview with Simone, boy, like I was up at 4:00 in the morning just listening to it, and I was truly blessed by your story. So I am looking forward to this conversation again. So let me just tell you a little bit about them, guys, just before we begin the interview. So Brian and Basillia, they met in 2009 as they were co-workers who became friends. They're both lovers of media, God, souls, and just, of course, they are just a couple that has been trying to, live a life that is pleasing to God. Basillia found the Sterling Gospel Music Award here in Jamaica, which is just, an amazing way of showcasing the gospel music industry here in Jamaica. And of course, through their ministry, the stuff from the Cuffs and their respective social media, they have been just blazing the trail to entertain, uplift, and of course minister to lives. In 2014, they got married, and now they have two beautiful daughters. And of course, we're just looking forward to hearing more about their story. So here, when we start the Diary of a Jesus Girl, we always start, we know that you two become one, but we always prefer to hear the conversion story. So I want each of you to begin and share with us, your conversion story. How did you come to Christ? What was life like before Christ? And, tell us a little bit about that journey.
Well, for me, I can't tell you much about what life was before Christ because I grew up in the church. All I knew growing up was church. My father was and still is a pastor. I grew up as a pastor's kid, PK as persons would call us. So I got saved. I got baptized at the age of 8. So as you can imagine, I never lived any kind of life before, quote unquote, meeting Christ. I always knew him, but I took that bold step at the age of 8 to get baptized. And so all my life, literally, I've been a Christian. And so it has really been just a part of my upbringing, and it has continued until today. So I don't have any grand story, unfortunately, where that is concerned, but it has not been an easy road. I will say that, because a lot of times people think that when you grow up in church, it's kind of just all a bed of roses because it's all you know. Actually, no, it was rough. It was rough, especially for me in high school. I've always said, I said it when I was growing up, that if I made it through high school and remained a Christian, I think I was good to go. because I think high school for me was the most challenging in terms of peer pressure and wanting to do certain things and, just wanting to experience a different kind of life outside of Christianity. So high school was a test for me. And I mean, the entire 5 years that I spent in high school. And so it has not been an easy road, but it has definitely been one that has been worth it. Yeah.
Thank you. Brian?
You were saying all my life. I thought you were singing a different song.
No, not to you.
I have a similar story, but not the exact one. I didn't grow up in terms of having a pastor rule over me. I grew up in a church-oriented family, though, with my mom and my dad and my grandmothers and grandfathers having a good influence with that. Well, I got baptized I won't tell you the year, but I got baptized when I was 10. Mm-hmm. So it's not far off from Basillia at all. And, I think my main reason for getting baptized, though, was not to solidify any walk with God. But they have some bridge, I say, if he might get baptized, we most can get baptized too. So I really followed the crowd. I was like, if he can get baptized, because, he was a bit more of a ruffian than I was. And I just said, if he's getting baptized, then I can get baptized too. So I followed the crowd. I got baptized. And it was probably about 3 years after that, a true conversion started to happen. And, I started really understanding what this Christian walk is. I started really putting myself into what God would have for me. And as Bas said, it wasn't easy, and it isn't easy, at all, because the minute you become an enemy to the enemy, then you are no longer friends, and he's going to come after you. So peer pressure, especially as a young man, it's real, it's rough in the Jamaican context. There were attempts at taking your innocence. There were attempts at getting involved in bad activities. But at the end of the day, we're here today. We're still walking the streets are narrow. It's really narrow. It's easy to drop off, and God has been good to us. So yeah, that's pretty much.
So just Basillia, we want to ask you though, when it comes out as a teenage girl, like you mentioned, the struggles of teenage teen depression and all of these things. There are some young people that might be listening. Tell them, what are some of the things that you did to just kind of help you to hold the faith, because, we know so many young people get baptized and based on influence of their parents, but once, things start happen, they're no longer, that fire for God. So, and also, like, did you feel like you missed anything? The party and the kind of, like, did you ever feel like you are missing anything?
Well, let me tell you, when I was in high school, I tried to dabble with fire a few times. Like I used to bring a short skirt and shorts in my bag and, change after school and go to my friend them. And the only things that I really, really didn't get to do was to go to they have the school fests and those kind of things. I never get to go to that because, it was outside of school hours. So I couldn't get away with that. But there were times when, every now and then I tried to do a little thing that wasn't probably acceptable as a Christian, because it seemed cool and it seemed like something that, I would want to try. And so I think in high school, especially as a teenager, seeing your friends going out on a Saturday and seeing your friends going to the parties and the fetes, it was something that I always wanted to do. I remember when I was growing up, I always said that, I'm just going to backslide for a weekend and I just want to go carnival. That's all I want to do. I just want to go carnival. I want to dress up. I want to go and dance and, and then come back to Jesus as I was. But for me, in the back of my head, the thought was always there was, while they're gallivanting, what if the Lord puts in his appearance? And that was enough to scare me back into the straight and narrow, for want of a better word than scare. But, for me, I had to take practical steps to remain on the straight and narrow. And by practical steps, I mean, when I realized that if I continued going down the road that I was going, and if I continued to try and sneak around and, do things, I realized that, playing with fire, I would definitely get burned. And so I I took practical steps. One, I did my best to surround myself with people and friends who understood my stance, who understood what, I stood for, and who understood that I'm a Christian and there are certain things that, I don't want to be a part of. Mind you, not every friend I had at that age was a Christian, but I found myself in companies who supported what I stood for, even if they had a different take on things. And so that was one. If I found that my friend or whoever I was spending a lot of time with was trying to influence me into doing things that I know I should not be doing, even though it's okay for them, I kind of pulled away. And so that for me was one of the major things, because peer pressure is really about things that your peers are pressuring you into and what your peers are doing and you feel pressured into doing as well. And so I had to be very conscious of my friends. I had to be very conscious of my circle. And another thing was I was very open with my parents in terms of my struggles and how I was feeling and some of the things that I wanted to try and some of the things that I wanted to do. I had a listening ear in my parents. And so I think for me, and if parents are listening, I think it's very important that we understand the importance of your children being able to talk to you. Because for me growing up, because I always had my parents and I knew I could talk to them about anything, it wasn't left to me getting the wrong advice from friends. And it wasn't left to me getting counsel from people who would lead me astray. And so for me, I think that was very important. And that's where my parents really stepped in and stepped up and helped to keep me on the straight and narrow. And also for teens who are listening, I think it's also very important to just know your conviction and be firm in your conviction, because that's one of the things that kept me. I remember when I said, I felt the tingling in the flesh, growing up. And I said, all right, I don't know, maybe I can just try this thing, maybe once or twice. I don't know. The Lord will forgive me. But then I had such a strong conviction that guided my decisions. And it was easy for me to talk to my parents. And so I had an outlet and I had somewhere that I could go to for counsel. So I'd say to teens, it's not easy. And I know it, we know it, but you have to know what it is that you want for your life. And I was able from that age to see where I wanted my life to go years down the road. And because of that, it helped to keep me grounded.
Yes. And Brian, you in the Jamaican culture, we know the Gallus mentality is glorified. And you went to, San Diego and, you went to UWI and come on, how did you manage to maintain purity until marriage? Practically, how the songs are telling you otherwise. I get, we go to church on a Sunday but the influence is not just friends, it's culturally. How did you manage to just hold that, that conviction, that purity?
First and foremost, I tell people I didn't hold it. It was God who helped me. I give all praise and glory to him, because it's not something that I can put on my shelf and say, I did this. It had to be God really helping me. I didn't have that relationship with my parents as Bas did, to go to them and tell my mother what, tell my father what. No, sir. I remember a piece of beating I get just writing a love letter to a girl for Valentine's Day, but just to tell my mother, say, I like this girl, or I that and I that. No, I grew up on some strict conditions than Bas. But I think it had to do with a mixture of the fear of God and the love of God. Let me explain. The first part is the fear of God. We growing up as Christians, you are drilled into fearing God and what will happen, damnation that will occur if you fall up, and if you fall and fornicate, you are going to hell. So there was that fear, and you are also fearful of getting somebody pregnant, and you're fearful of diseases. So there's a fear part, and the fear part is, I think, not even the beginning, but it should be a part of the equation, but not the driving force. For a huge part, it was the driving force, and I think that is what happens with our young people. Not even young people on a whole, because no matter your age. Yeah, I think what happens is that we fear the circumstances or the repercussions, which is, if we go to hell or if God comes while we're doing it or if we die or whatever. And there is a thing that I said some years ago when an accident happened with my brother, that almost dying changes nothing. I'd heard it before and I saw it living out there. We are so fearful of the mortality of man and the humanity that when we are sick or when we are unwell or when we are in that situation where it seems like we're going to die, we make changes. We make health changes when we are not doing so well at the doctor. We start cutting out what we eat, we exercise more, we drink healthy, whatever. But then 5 years down the road, not even so long in some cases, if nothing happens to you or the doctor's reports start getting good, you lose sight of that mortality. You lose sight of that hope that you had in God. So you start to chill again. So that's the fear part. And a lot of young people are afraid of this or afraid of that. But then when God doesn't come, because we hear that from a long time, then we start experimenting and playing with fire again. But the love of God now and the love for God is what I think is most important and what concretizes that. If I love somebody or I love something, then there are certain things I will not do to affect that love. And we're not talking about the butterfly type of love, we're talking about true love. And if I love my wife and I know that she don't love chicken, there's no way I'm going to get up and cook chicken every single day. I'm going to stay away from chicken, and I'm going to probably, when I go to work, I probably eat one chicken dish, but I don't bring it to her. It's not that she said don't eat chicken, but she don't love it. So I keep it away from her. Same thing with God. If we love God and understand that, for God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten son, etc., and we understand what love gave us, and we are now giving back in the love, then no matter what anybody else wants to say, when the song them at school say Ray, when the artists them say Ray, when the brethren them say, yo, come do this, when even people in church at times would have said to you, say, no man, no buy no pussy in a bag, take a one chance, take a one draw, take a one smoke, take a one drink, take a one, no man, you can't even try with that girl here. No, if I love God, then I'll not do anything to hurt God. Yeah, so that is what I think is most important. As I continue to grow as a Christian, then I started growing in understanding of the things of God and how to show my love for God. So I want to do certain things. And most importantly, we talk about negative peer pressure. There is positive peer pressure. And I think sometimes we criticize peer pressure on a whole and we don't distinguish the negative from the positive. Fill yourself and fill your circles with positive reinforcements and positive people. Build your own clique and your own, if I'm not going to call it no gang, but your own circle, your inner circle that has similar mindsets, similar goals, similar ambitions, similar aspirations, and similar morals and values. And if you have those persons around you, there are a lot of older persons that I would associate with than the younger persons, right? And they were critical and key in helping me to maintain my walk. Like the stories are I've said some of them going to UE and girls saying, boy, I come to our room with she going to take my virginity. There are people who told me that before I leave university, then they're going to take my virginity. There are people who said things, did things, showed me things. But, when I was weak, God is strong and he continues to be strong. And when I was weak, meaning like I would have even sought to entertain some of these conversations. But at the end of it all, even in being a masculine man in Jamaica, where you try to be rough and tough and show off your bravado, I'm just like, yo, my girl, it's Billy, that if me start, you can't manage me or whatever. It was a way of me to say, no matter what you want to say, I'm not going to do it, because at the end of the day, when I started realizing how valuable this thing was for people and that they want to take it from me, then I started guarding it somewhere.
Wow. Yes. So we want to jump in the love story, and I'm not sure which one of you are going to get started, but tell us, a little bit about how you met, and, up to marriage, what was that? How did you guys, form that God love story?
Well, there I was at work, focusing on the Lord.
Hear him now.
And ambitions to be a great practitioner. Working in the newsroom at Love 101 FM, and I was focused on the Lord and doing my work. And along came Basillia, what everybody was talking about, and how she's this and she's that. And I'm like, oh, she who used to live on the radio when me I try to get on the radio, watch me and her. And then they were making such a big deal about her, and I was like, yeah, but you're not going. So when she came, I said, I'm going to personally show you that I don't really, I'm not fancying you at all. So here she came in and she was saying, hello to everybody. And I'm like, hello. And I went back to my work. And I'm sure she was taken aback. Looking back, it was, I won't say immature.
I'll say that for you.
It wasn't advisable. I could have messed up a lot, but it was just, me just saying, I don't like her, so I'm gonna show it. And not just not liking her, but I don't see why people are making such a big deal about this person. So that's how we met. She came in, she started working in the department, and I was her supervisor. And she was coming from Clarendon at the time? Mandeville, right? And she's now in Kingston, making some changes, finding house to live, etc., etc. And I realized after that time, maybe there's something to this girl. People like her, so she was genuine, she was loving, she was caring, she treated everybody as if it was somebody that she know a long time, and that's a rare trait. I believe in virtues in a woman, and she showed herself to be virtuous, and we became friends. And after becoming friends, she looked me, and that's it.
What? No, that's not how the story went. That is not how the story went.
Let us hear.
Brian, just wrap it up in one. I knew that I was wondering how long it was going to take him for him to do that, because that's the story he tells people. But yes, the first part of it was true. The second part of it is not really so it go, but yeah, I guess it has some merit to it. But what I'll say is, when I met Brian, we never hit it off initially because of how he was behaving. I didn't like him off the bat because he was very dismissive of me, and I couldn't understand why. I found out after why, his explanation a while ago. But at the time, I'm a very friendly person, and I usually get along well with people, most people that I meet. And so I couldn't understand why I was being very, nice to this gentleman, or so I thought. At the time, I never considered him a gentleman, but I was being nice to this man, and he was behaving that way towards me. Anyways, we started working together, and I think he kind of let his guard down because he realized that I needed help. I just moved to Kingston. I knew nowhere, and it was very hard for me to get around because I was not used to the one-ways in Kingston. I found myself driving up a one-way, seeing 2 lanes of traffic coming down, wondering what on earth is happening here, and having to turn off into a fast food parking lot out of fear of meeting in an accident and that kind of thing. And so he started helping me to get around Kingston, started showing me around, especially the places that I knew I needed to frequent. So he literally was my little chauffeur at first. And then we started to get to know each other, and still didn't hit it off right away. He was just my friend, right? Just my friend. But I remember distinctly 6 months before we started dating, I was, talking to the Lord, and I'm saying, Lord, when I started seeing some traits in him that I was beginning to fancy.
You love me.
I said, Lord, I kind of like this little brown man. This was me talking to God. I kind of like a brown man. And so I really want to know from you what it is that you want from me where he's concerned, because at the time I was at a place where I really didn't want a relationship. I kind of just wanted to go from being single to in a relationship with the person I'm going to marry, because at that age, yes, I was still young. I was 20 when I met him. And I really was just at that place because of things that I had gone through prior to that. I said, Lord, the next person that I am going to be in a relationship with, he needs to be my husband. And so if Brian is not my husband, please can't tell me, because I am not taking anything with him if he's not. He's fine if we can just be friends, Lord. That's good with me. And I remember after, him showing me out, I was excited about little things like Tavern House and Pizza Hut. I never had those things in Mandeville at the time. So I was excited about these little places. And so he would take me to those places that I wanted to go to.
Creatively looking.
And I remember when I was talking to the Lord said to me clearly, to look in my phone. This was before we started dating, 6 whole months before we started dating. Look in my phone. And I'm there like, all right, what am I looking for? And I'm looking through my phone and I'm like, okay, Lord, what am I looking for? And I heard a voice said, go into your gallery. I went into my gallery. I'm there scrolling and still questioning the Lord, what am I looking for? And he said, scroll to the pictures from Devon House. And I scrolled to the pictures from Devon House, and I came upon a picture of me and Brian. My brother was the one taking the pictures at the time. And the Lord said, that's your answer. And I'm looking at the picture like, okay, what's my answer? I'm there looking at the picture. And the Lord said, look in the background of the picture. And when I looked in the background of the picture, I saw a huge green light over both of our heads. Apparently, we were standing close to a traffic light. And the Lord said, that is your answer. So I literally got a green light to the relationship. And so I knew off the bat, because I was asking the Lord about my husband, not a boyfriend. I was asking the Lord about a husband. And he gave me that answer 6 months before we got married. 6 months before we started dating, because we got married like 4 years later. 4 whole years after me getting my confirmation about him being my husband. And so everything that happened after that was kind of just done in confidence because I knew he was my husband. And so he said that I looked him, but no, it was just that I knew. But the thing is, for me, I never told him, because for me, I am very strong on God talking to me as well, because I know that God and Brian never vex. And so I said, Lord, if you give me a sign, you're going to need to give him his own confirmation, because I have been in experiences before, and I have seen where one person get a sign and tell the person that, the Lord said, whether it was the Lord or not, the Lord said that, you are mine and you are to get married to me and that kind of thing. And those things made me uncomfortable personally, because I believe if the Lord can tell you, he can also tell me. And so I never told him about my confirmation that I got before we started dating until a year after we got married. I never told him, because I did not want him to have that pressure saying, all right, she get fair confirmation, or so she said, what's happening with me? And I didn't want him to feel like he had to act, or he had to move, or he had to, do something because I got my confirmation. I strongly believe that the Lord would have given him his own confirmation, which the Lord did. Took some time though, but during that time, I was very confident about him being my husband. And so everything leading up was done in total confidence. So that's what he's talking about with me looking him. I never really looked him. I didn't know that he was mine. I just didn't tell him.
So, Brian, I want you to jump in, because right now, in many of us are older single women, right? That might be listening in our 30s at church. And it's a little bit more anxious to get married. But you guys dated for 4 years. What would you, and sometimes in the Christian world, as women, we feel like, oh, we have to just be sitting and waiting to be chosen, talk to us on the man's perspective of, what could cause a man to wait, even if he's sure, or is it that you weren't sure? Talk to us about your little journey of, 4 years.
4 long years. And imagine this gentleman was asking me for 5 additional years on top of the 4 years. I said,
It was worth it. They say anticipation and pleasure. But yeah, seriously though, it's true. I've heard it being said, and I agree that if a man wants something, he's going to go and get it. And if he really wants, he's going to. But there are different factors as to when he gets to that point. For me, there were several factors, but the major one being my mother. All right. So long and short, my father and mother raised us until I was about 11. Then my father left to go overseas, and he's been overseas since then. He went to work to make things better for us, but things changed, and it affected a lot of the growing up that I would have received. It affected how I felt about a man, meaning being a man. Yeah, it affected how I felt about life on a whole, what I was like as a man, what are some of the things that I wanted to accomplish that I didn't believe I would have accomplished because I did not have that male influence in my life. Some of the things that happened that I regretted then that I believe would not have happened if he was around. So that was a part of it. The whole being, it's not even, identifying who you are as a person, but it's important. If a man is not convinced in the type of man that he is and he should be, and confident in the man that he is and, what he brings. I don't like saying it sometimes, but I'm going to use it tonight for what you bring to the table, If the man doesn't feel confident in himself, then he's not going to to take unto himself a wife, so to speak. And, I am old-fashioned and I believe in getting a house for my wife, etc., etc. But my brother, who was older, he would have gotten different skills and traits from my dad because he would have been around him longer, doing the electrical work, doing the plumbing, doing whatever, because my dad is a jack of all trades. And I didn't have a lot of these things. So I felt like I was behind where I needed to have been. And then my mom took sick along the way, and my brother got married and left and went overseas. And I was the only one there. Yes, we have aunts and grandma and granddad were there, and her family members rallied around. But in terms of being there for her, I took that on myself, and I didn't want to leave her because, even sometimes she would say, everybody leaving her, etc. And I took that personal, and it affected me deciding to leave my mother's house because I did not want to leave her alone. And yes, some people might say mama's boy or whatever, but it's not even about being a mama's boy because I have ambitions. I have what you consider mama's boy to be maybe be different from what I think it is. And, I had it all, what I wanted to be as a father, what I wanted to be as a husband, what I wanted to be as a child of God, etc. But my mother's illness affected me. It affected me mentally, emotionally, spiritually. There were rocky moments between me and God. And I would not want to take unto myself somebody and bring all of that quote unquote drama to their lives. And even though she was, a good friend and being there and whatever, I did not want her to. I mean, if I would have so many sleepless nights crying, I would not want that on her. If I would be going through so much pain seeing my mother the way she is, I would not want that on her. So that was a big part, and it took some time, and it took a unique way watching a Madia show and hearing Madia talk directly to me. She got the green light, I got the green light through our show. And that was where I realized that I needed to move past this. And my mother, if she was healthier, would have wanted me to move past it. And I made the step, and, I believed that it was the right time. I believe in God's timing fully. You're looking back at me and say, boy, maybe I shouldn't have waited and maybe we would have been more. But when hindsight is 2020, you look at where God has brought us from and where we are now and where our relationship is and how much we've been able to impact people, etc., etc., etc. Maybe if we had started earlier, we would not have. Maybe if we had started later, we would not have. But I do believe in God's perfect timing. And when you are allowing God or so immersed in allowing God to take control of your life, which I believe that is very important, then the favor of God will follow you.
Yes. So, Basillia, I want you to probably, as a woman though, trying to go through this, what you consider a long journey of waiting, while you in your heart, I'm sure you went through seasons of doubt or, wondering, okay, well, I'm thinking you would have gone through any seasons of doubt. Tell us, if somebody that's listening, that is trusting God to send them a partner and it feels like I don't even see someone in the, I don't even see perspective. But probably somebody else that's listening that, probably dating, but this person is just not, making the steps. As a woman, what would you say are some of your tips or encouragement, etc.?
But for me, I had doubts probably after 2 years, and nothing seemed to be leading towards marriage. I mean, I knew, but I think at one point I was wondering if I was the one who spoke to my own self because of what Brian was going through and how he would not choose to open up or relate to me, how he was feeling, and kind of just, share his burdens, because I knew he was having a difficult time. And for me, I got to a point where I said, all right, you know what, God, I'm not too sure what's happening, but maybe if I let this go, eventually it will come back. But I think at the end of it all, because I trusted God and I trusted his heart and I trusted what he wanted for my life, I knew that I needed to ensure that my steps were continuously ordered by him. And so my tip for any young woman who may be waiting, it could be waiting in a relationship, waiting outside of a relationship, be comforted by knowing that what God does is well done in his time. Because I know I know some of the repercussions of walking outside of the will of God, and that's not a place you want to find yourself in. I know how hard it can be when you see your biological clock ticking and you're probably saying to yourself, boy, I need to kind of just hurry up and get married. And so you find a lot of times some persons end up settling for one, what was not for them, or two, just settling for any and anything because of the sake of getting married and because of the sake of having children. My advice would be stay in the will of God. A lot of times it's pressuring from the church and from family and people in general. But I think most importantly, apart from all the pressures and what people think they want for your life, and, a lot of them have good intentions, or some of them have good intentions. Above it all, staying in the will of God is most important. Amen. No matter how you feel, no matter how mentally or physically or emotionally distressing it is to quote unquote stay single.
And it can be.
Yeah. Stay in the will of God. And another thing I'll say is be content in your season. Be content in the different seasons of your life. Because I'm a firm believer that if you can't be content with being single, I don't know if you'll find true contentment in being married. Because contentment is not just about you putting on a ring and having somebody there. Contentment is a personal thing, a spiritual thing a spiritual place that you have to get to for you. So, we always say that we don't believe in having another half. We believe in having another whole, because we strongly believe that you have to be whole in order to be whole again with somebody else. So, yeah.
Yeah. So, Brian, as we're preparing to wrap up, I know you shared your story, on the interview with Simone, just choosing your family over your career, which I'm sure, it's probably contradictory to what the world will tell you to do. Probably in about a minute, just kind of tell us, how did you find the courage to do that? And what advice would you, especially men that probably listening regarding balancing career and their dreams regarding and family?
Well, it goes back to something I said earlier. Again, Brian strength, no. Brian making right decision, no. When you're sold out to God and purpose, then it will all line up for you, and it becomes easier. Because it's not an easy decision at all, making a decision to give up what you consider to be a dream job, to give up what you consider the door to opening many other doors for you. It was a point where I was now even starting to grow. I'd gotten a promotion. I was now doing more stuff on air. I was getting a lot of opportunities. I was voicing. I was doing this. I was doing that. And my name was getting out there. And then, bam, family. People will tell you, no, your family must understand. And then if you do this for 15 more years, then your family will be settled for life and this and that. A lot of families don't make it to the 15 more years. A lot of families don't make it to 5 more years. A lot of relationships with their children don't make it for next year because of how long you waited. Because you thought it was okay, but they needed you then. And I do believe it was the right decision. And my former boss always says she respects me for making not just the decision what is popular, but the right decision, which is family first. And so many media practitioners and so many of my friends and colleagues in the whole industry have come to me and, expressed some feelings that I never knew other persons felt and that existed. So there are people out there who are like you, men who are thinking about putting family first or putting God first, even in some cases putting yourself first versus the job. We have sometimes been cultured to believe that it's the job first, because that is how we make it from month to month or from year to year. But the truth is, we always say that if the job hits some hard times, or if you pass from the job, then you are, they move on past you, and they find a way to cut costs, so to speak. So at the end of the day, it is more about being aligned with God's will than your personal feelings and the goals that you want. We are a society that have become goal-oriented, and the goals have moved away from the original goal, which is, mankind was made to serve God. And we are now serving our self-interests and our ambitions to be as successful and this and that. And people say, you can talk to me, you reach certain levels and whatever. When we started out in media and I reached, quote unquote, certain levels, and I was on the radio every single day and people were wishing they had my life, I was taking home probably $40,000 if so much. people used to message and want my life. Yeah, and me and my wife were there. The favor of God took us through that first year of marriage, where we were probably taking home money that if people know, they would laugh at us. There are my students in class who tell me that they want X amount of money when they graduate and start their first job. And I never saw that money until probably 6-7 years after my first job. You know, so it's we become so narrow-minded as it relates to our ambition and our goal and dreams of success that we've put God away. And by putting God away, that means that we have moved further back. So we may be richer, or we may be more ambitious, and we may be more successful in the life that we want to live in the materialistic sense. But our heart's truly happy. And is God truly happy? Are we living up to our true potential? Not are we living up to our financial potential, but our true potential, changing lives, impacting souls, impacting people. I mean, when you made mention of Sing Soul Session, and when I look at 90,000 people watch my story, when I look at, I can't even tell you how many comments I've read and responded to, and like, I never imagined my life like that. Like little old Brian from Spanish Town, big up Spain Town, massive, big up to the Jagoites, big up to the UEItes, big up to DCS at MCU. You know, it is not what I envisioned. I wanted to be a doctor. I wanted to be winning millions per month and taking care of my mother. Now I am impacting souls in a different way. Now I'm impacting minds and lives in a different way. Speaking at Boys Day, speaking at functions, MCing weddings. You know, so I have grown in a way that I didn't expect.
Amen.
And I think that is all God right there. We need to move past what we want and go to what God wants. And that is the right decision.
Amen. Basililla, last question for you. So you took the faith journey to start the Sterling Gospel Awards, but I know you are, a TikTok star. How did you get the courage to, from, yes, you're into media, all of that, but just to launch out to do these scary things that, you might, So just kind of tell us about that for you.
Well, Brian can tell you that when it comes on to me doing things, I'm fearless. I just do it. That's just me. And I think I get that spirit from my father because he has that kind of entrepreneurial spirit. He's not afraid to try things. He's not afraid to launch out. And so growing up and seeing that, it sort of became a part of me. And so even when I was thinking about starting the Sterling Awards, I remember Brian asking me if I don't want to probably wait an extra year and see if we can work on, getting some funds in and all of that. But I knew at the time that it was the right moment to do it. And so for me, conviction and just knowing when God is giving the green light has made such a huge difference because I believe in God's timing. And I had wanted to start the Sterling Awards several years before we actually started. But I also got the revelation that it was not the right time. But when I knew, and anytime I know it's the right time to do a certain thing, then I just launch out with both hands and both feet and, always having the support of Brian, no matter how crazy the ideas sound or no matter how far-fetched they may seem, he's always there to just support me and to just help me to maneuver because it has not been easy. As you know, you were at our first awards.
I was.
So much. Yes, you were at our first awards supporting and some other supporters and the industry. And so we've come a long way. We've come a long way where that is concerned. And when I left radio, back in 2018. So long. Oh my goodness. Yes. When I left radio back in 2018, yes, before we had our second daughter, and I decided not to go back in radio right away because I knew that, sometimes you just go through different seasons. And I also know that purpose looks a little bit different at different seasons in your life. And so from that came TV hosting, from that came TikTok, from that came YouTube stuff from the Cuffs. And, where TikTok is concerned, I actually joined TikTok by accident. I never meant to join TikTok. It was a mistake because Brian wasn't home and I couldn't scroll through his TikTok. And so I accidentally created my own account. But when I realized that it was something that could impact people in a different way, like we say, young people say on the internet, I understood the assignment. And I said, all right, well, I said, you know what? All right, this is a way that I can use to help to bring smiles to people's faces. Because a lot of times we look at ministry as just going in the pulpit and preaching and putting on that the whole show. Sometimes ministry is just making somebody's day better. And for me, doing TikTok and being able to provide a clean entertainment that even your 10-year-olds can watch and enjoy,
yes.
That means a lot to me in terms of me living in purpose and on purpose. Seasons look different and purpose looks different for me at different stages of my life. And I am just so very happy that we are able to impact in so many different ways, in so many different spaces, because who you see on TikTok is not who you see on YouTube. Who you see on YouTube may not be who you hear on this podcast, right?
Yes.
What is more of what we do, right? I mean, YouTube is a lot of what we discuss here on the podcast. And so, we're just so very happy and so very blessed to be able to impact lives in different spaces, in different ways, just knowing that it all leads back to God.
And just as you go, I want you guys to just share. So whatever is on your heart, it's couple up, couples are listening, singles are listening, whatever the Lord placed on your heart right now, just send an encouragement as we close.
Okay, Brian will do that on behalf of us both.
First thing is no two couples are the same. We don't believe that anybody has the perfect model for every relationship. There are bits and pieces we take from everybody, and there are some things we just don't take at all. The second thing that we believe is that no one rule is that golden or that gospel that applies to every situation. Every situation should be taken on its own merit. You need to give yourself a fair and a fighting chance. Most importantly, you're both fighting to get to an end goal, not fighting each other while getting to the end goal. And sometimes we get the wires crossed. So it's important to know that, So we want success. We want happy and long-lasting marriages. And it's that I've come from a background, as you heard, what it is. Basillia grew up in a completely different environment. But we're here now together on one journey together. Two completely different individuals on a common path. So there are so many things about relationships. Don't give up. Don't give up, because we serve a God who does not give up on us. And we've been so wrong so many different times. We've been, failing him at so many different points, and he still keeps us. And even #couple goals, relationship goals, no couple is perfect. We aren't perfect. And we tell people that all the while, we are not perfect. We are trying to achieve what God wants for us in our relationship, in our marriage. Purpose takes time. Balance, the next thing we try so hard to get to. And, sometimes there's no balance. Sometimes it's completely over one side, and next time it's completely over the next side. And then, we try and find a middle ground. So relationships are hard work. It takes a lot out of you. But with God in the middle, God as the captain of the ship, God anchoring the ship as well. Like people say, God is the third strand in the cord, or third cord in the whole package. But he is the driver of the relationship. He is the engine of the relationship. He's the anchor that holds it. He's the glue. So God, in essence, is the relationship, and we are in God. I think that is the most important part. And for more, you can listen to us that stuff from the Cuffs.
Definitely. So, guys, and go over stuff for the Cuffs to hear all things marriage, all things family. And again, I thank you guys for coming on. And definitely, we are looking forward to hearing you guys come back again to the Diary of a Jesus Girl podcast. Have a beautiful one. God bless you.
Thanks for having us, and all the best. Enjoy. Keep doing what you're doing.
Guys, I know that conversation seemed a little short to you, but even in, there's so much value that was said. There's so much wisdom that flowed from that conversation. I mean, even as a single woman, and the encouragement to say, listen, ensure that I'm contented in this season. Ensure that I know who I am. Ensure that I am walking into my purpose now in this season, so that when someone else come along, that it will be a compliment and not a competition, and that for me was a major takeaway. Also, just as Basililla shared, her journey of ensuring that she's hearing God's voice, in every single circumstances. And as I always stress on this podcast, it's so important for us to spend time with God, spend time with the Holy Spirit, reading his word, cultivating a personal relationship with God. The word of God says, my sheep knows my voice and no other voice he would follow. It means that I have to know God for myself. And I know some persons are listening and saying, but Crystal, I pray and I don't hear God. Crystal, I've been praying to God about this thing and it's not, coming to pass. God is not answering my prayers. I'm sure the Cuffs probably could have, shared a lot about that to say, there are things that they are probably praying about and have prayed about that has not come to pass, but it doesn't change who God is. And that's my encouragement, even as we listen every couple of, even as you listen every Diary for Jesus Girl podcast, is to just fall in love with God for who he is, fall in love with God, not just for what he can do, but for, just who he is. Trust is hard, trust is hard for you. And even as a single woman, I love the couple up because it just gives me an encouragement to say, hey, there are couples that are going out there that are trying to impact lives for God's glory, that are trying to build and live godly lives that will, just honor God, and to be an impact to others. And that for me, was truly a blessing. I've been listening to stuff for the Cuffs. I'll definitely leave the link in the show notes. Definitely go and follow Basillia on TikTok. Go and listen. Brian's interview, you would have seen a different side of him, that I believe that will, just kind of bring an encouragement. And this is, we know that in COVID, people have lost a lot of loved ones. We know that in COVID, there's a lot of what we consider restrictions, but I believe that it's also COVID has bring such, just bring us in a season where we're forced to slow down and to truly see what matters. If you are still feeling out of, alignment, it means you need to shift your perspective and, just kind of sit at the feet of Jesus and to say, what is it that I can learn now? Who can I be right now? If you're married or if you're engaged, if you're dating, right? How can I bring glory to God individually, but also together as a couple? And if you're struggling, in your marriage, if you're struggling with anything, now is the season for you to reach out and get some help. Send us a prayer request here at the Diary for Jesus Girl podcast. I have a team of prayer warriors that are, waiting for you to pray with you. I do know persons I can refer you to get counseling. I can refer you to different persons that, that can help you. You don't have to try to do it alone. You don't have to try to do it alone. So again, I thank you guys for listening to another Couple Up series. This episode was brought to you by Daylight Publishers. Daylight Publishers is a faith-based publishing and consultancy company where we help aspiring and new authors to write, publish, market, and monetize their books. And we love to help you to bring that book to life. We believe that books leave a legacy beyond us, and we want to help you to do that and to just impact lives with our words. Just like Basillia says, through TikTok, she's able to bring smiles. Crystal is like such a big Basillia fan, right? She loves Basillia, love looking at her content, and it's such a blessing to see Christian, fun, entertaining content on social media, and we just love the work that she's doing. And your books can do that, right? Your books can bring a smile on someone's face. It can bring inspiration. It can equip someone. And this is how I minister, right? Through helping persons. I write books, of course, so go and check out my books on Amazon. Definitely, all inspired by the Holy Spirit. And also, if you want to write a book, publish your book, market your book, monetize your book, I'd love to help you to do that. That's how, the Lord has blessed me to minister to persons. So again, that's another episode of the Diary for Jesus Girl podcast with yours truly, Crystal Day. Yes, and we just listen stuff with the Cuff, a couple up with the Cuffs, and we're looking forward to some amazing conversations coming up. So God bless you. See you soon.
Diary of a Jesus girl.